And one of my favorite things, I guess, as a Villeneuve fan, and as someone who's really anticipating Dune and excited after such a dud year for movies to see a movie like Dune come out, because there aren't a lot of, I guess, as a big fantasy fan, there aren't a lot of epic fantasy or sci-fi type of films coming out right now. Like, we haven't had and I don't expect, like, I'm not going to compare them to movies in the past, but I don't feel like I've seen a movie on that science fiction or fantasy scope in a while, probably since Blade Runner 2049. And I don't even know that I'd count that because that was a little more of a niche property and movie. But like, even going back to like just kind of a massive book being adapted into a really well directed and performed movie, we really haven't seen something like that since something like Lord of the Rings. I'm trying to think of other franchise properties that have really gotten, I guess, the respect they deserve. We see video game movies try to come out and they never really get like the budget or the talent behind them that they deserve. Or, any of these movies being adapted or getting optioned off, they never quite have the backing behind them to really get the big dogs behind them when it comes to the talent that they get to produce the movie. So I feel like it's getting a movie like Dune done by such a great director with such an all-star cast is such an opportunity that I don't think you'll see for a few more years. Cause it's like, I don't know, these situations feel like, to me, like lightning in a bottle, at least to an extent. So it's really scary to know, essentially, like Villeneuve says, he pretty much is like, you've doomed the movie. Like, the movie's done. Like, It's not going to make money, and you probably just killed it as a franchise. I don't know if he was planning to make any more films in the world. I don't know if he was planning to just do the one and move on. But now, the director himself is not positive on that. So it's a really frightening time. But one of my favorite things, one of the few things that I guess I loved most of the letter, but one of the few things that I really liked about the letter that was actually a positive thing that it was addressing was the fact that he called Dune his best movie yet, which I thought was really interesting. I think all directors are going to, you're going to say to some extent, like, oh, whatever my latest work is, this is the best thing I've done. But Villeneuve has directed some fantastic movies. Pretty much all of his movies I have loved. I think the only one that like I didn't like attach to was like Enemy, the Jake Gyllenhaal twin one.
That's still really good, though.
Really good movie. I thought it was really interesting, and it had like a lot of the elements. I think it leaned more into the weird of Villeneuve's style, and it was kind of one note. I felt like in an artistic way. I really enjoyed it. But like outside of that, I've genuinely attached and remembered, and I'm someone that doesn't remember movies, frankly. Like I remember watching movies and big pieces of them, but like they don't stick in my mind all the time. But like almost all of his movies have, like even back to Prisoners with Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman. Like that movie, I feel like I never really heard much about it at the time. I just kind of watched it when it came out. It was like on a streaming service or something. But it like blew, I didn't even understand who Villeneuve was. He was, I guess, maybe a newer director at the time, or no one that I was familiar with.
Enemy and Prisoners came out in the same year.
Okay.
And prior to that, he had done a few French films, I think. I might have this wrong. I want to say Enemy and Prisoners were his first two English language movies.
That makes sense to me. But yeah, the Prisoners was the first one I latched onto, and I didn't really understand who the director was at the time. I was just like, that was a really great movie. I really like movies with like that. I like the tone of those movies. It's the really serious, not necessarily like them because they're dark, but that kind of really serious, dark, artistically tinted drama. Very suspenseful. Kind of going against the grain. It doesn't feel like it's the type of movie that's got the happy ending, fairy tale Disney type of stuff. Not to say that I want it to be like dark and like heavy or have bad endings, but just feeling unpredictable and very gripping. That being said, though, I've loved pretty much everything else that he's done. Sicario is still one of that might be his best film, like all around to me.
I think Arrival is his best. Yeah,
you're probably right on that. Sicario might be my favorite. But then again, when I look at favorites, I think I have a personal love for Blade Runner 2049. Mm-hmm. But Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, I absolutely love all of those. You can throw Prisoners in there. The only one I'm not really attached to, like I said, is Enemy. So that being said, for someone who has made such great films that are like award-winning films and universally acclaimed by film critics and the general like cinephile genre of or stereotype of person, to say that Dune which is kind of a big studio franchise type of film, which I guess you might would expect to have more oversight. You know, when you're doing a property like that, it's not a fully original movie. You would expect it to be maybe more diluted. You know, maybe he didn't have as much freedom on it as he did, and that could still be the case. And he could just think it still came out really great. But I'm really excited to see a movie that the director that I trust and love is hailing, I guess, as one of his best films. Because I think he has some stiff competition among his own films. And the cast of that movie is phenomenal to me. Because he didn't just get like great actors. He didn't just get, you know, like a Marvel movie cast of just like big actors. Like he got really critically acclaimed actors, but not like people that just take every movie that's offered them or show up all the time as like superstars. You know, he got like budding stars like Jason Momoa, Timothy Chalamet, who's, you know, kind of becoming a very acclaimed drama actor who I guess I don't really expect to see. I don't really expect to see him in like science fiction or fantasy or franchise type of films. Same thing goes for Javier Bardem, Zendaya, an up and coming talent that I don't think a lot of people would have seen coming.
Yeah.
Just a very interesting cast. Rebecca Ferguson, one of my favorite female actors, playing Paul's mother. Lady Jessica, I believe. God, I hope I don't anger any nerds by I shouldn't say any names that I forgot, because I will say this. I say this as someone who's really excited about the Dune movie. I'm not the biggest fan of the book. I think that might be why I'm excited about the movie, is because I really like Dune as a property. It is without a doubt a massively influential book. Paved the way for a lot of science fiction and fantasy crossover type of works. I think it has a good story. I think that Frank Herbert is a masterful writer in ways that I wish we still retained within fantasy and science fiction. Like just down to his prose craft. Like if you read the first page of Dune, it's just so well written. Like the prose itself just reads like butter. It's gorgeous. So many things done right. But yeah, massive respect for Frank Herbert. Really like Dune. I didn't just love reading the whole book though. If that makes sense. I don't know if that's like an okay opinion to have, or if that even totally makes sense. And it could just be because it's a little bit of an older book. And, you know, when you're reading things, you know, well after they've come out, I've already consumed other things like it. The style of prose that is popular now in much of science fiction and fantasy is not like it was back then. There's a lot of things that could have turned me away from it. I did enjoy the read. It's not my favorite. I didn't love it, but I say that to address the movie and say that I think it's a story with a ton of potential, and with the added ability to utilize 2020's visual capabilities of films with VFX and the like. I think that Villeneuve can only bring Dune more to life, you know, and I don't want to say that as like someone to, you know, disparage Frank Herbert or say that his Dune movie might be better than the original book. 'Cause like, I'm not going to say something like that. You know, Frank Herbert by all means deserves his pedestal, but, for me personally, just in terms of sheer enjoyment, I'm very excited to see the world on the big screen with these actors that I love, and done by a director who I know. We watched him do Blade Runner 2049, which was, you know, I guess maybe his first like adaptation type of film. I mean, some of his other films were adapted from like books and stuff, but adaptation from like a franchise, you know, science fiction type of thing. And we saw how much love that was made with. So I'm really excited to see him inject that as an even better director, as a director with probably even more sway into Dune. So, but enough of the gushing about Dune. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. I'm just excited. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you know, I bring up Blade Runner 2049, and I think it's a really interesting connection to Dune though, because that was the last film that he did, and it didn't do very well in the box office. Got great reviews. I feel like it was a movie for cinephiles. I loved it, as I've said before, but it kind of just tanked at the box office. Didn't make much money. And while I'm very happy that he got the role directing Dune, I have to question I have to wonder if Blade Runner 2049 didn't make some of these studio executives a little nervous.
Well, Prisoners, Sicario, and Arrival were all successes. Mm-hmm. You know, on their own scale. Blade Runner, I feel like just doesn't have the box office draw just as a franchise. Mm-hmm. The first one didn't, and the second one basically did the same thing as the first one. I feel like he's so well respected. He just has enough of a draw on the quality of film that he makes that I don't feel like he's going to be locked out of projects because of Blade Runner not doing that well. And
I wouldn't expect him to be locked out.
While Blade Runner didn't do well, it also wasn't a complete failure.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a success.
Yeah.
Really.
And I say that not as me judging the film and being like, well, it didn't do that well. Why would you give a property like Dune to this director? Because like I said, I don't have to profess my adoration for his films anymore. Like, I'm very happy that he got this. It just makes me question. I'm like, I want to see him direct these types of films. I want to see more directors like him directing franchise, big box office, blockbuster films. But as like a studio executive, and you're looking at, yes, Blade Runner didn't have a ton of draw, but Blade Runner is also long and boring for the average viewer. Mm-hmm. It's long and boring. You know, I showed the movie to my girlfriend. I was like giddy the whole time. This is so good. And then like later we were talking about it, she's like, yeah, it's kind of boring. Like it was really good. I thought it was good, but you know, it wasn't that entertaining, you know, and that is the truth of it though.
No, I mean, I actually,
the movie is long and slow.
I agree. I liked it a lot, but that's why it's not my favorite. I think sections of it are incredible. I do think it's too long.
There's something that I really like, and this could be just totally subjective. There's something I really like about movies that are long and slow, assuming that they're visually stimulating enough for me, mm-hmm. and that I'm gripped. And maybe this is, you know, the fact that I just really enjoy the Blade Runner franchise and the world, of just the property in general. But it kept me. He does a really good job of making things long and slow, but making you kind of hang on every word personally. You know, there's a lot of space in that movie. You know, he gives actors, you know, a lot of time to just stew on the lines and on the shots. And the shots if the shots weren't so beautiful, I would not be okay with it.
Well, I have nothing against long and boring movies. I mean, I loved every minute of The Irishman, and The Irishman is the longest mainstream film to be released in like 30 years or something crazy like that. Like, I loved every minute of that movie. I did feel like Blade Runner could have been trimmed up a bit. And what I mean by it doesn't have the draw is that it's a slow contemplative sci-fi movie, which is not a box office draw at all.
Yeah.
And also trailer wise, they did choose to put every shot of action in the trailer for those movies, or for that movie. Which it was kind of like Ad Astra, where mm-hmm. like every bit of action in that movie was thrown into the trailer, and there's like very few bits of action in that movie. So I feel like in many ways they marketed it a bit wrong. But I just don't think Blade Runner has the draw in general.
Yeah. And so that being said, that's kind of exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, I love it, but it didn't have the draw, and he didn't do a lot to bring in casual viewers. Now hand him another franchise that's, I would say, bigger, obviously, that being said, you know, I don't think this many years later people are just like talking about Dune. It's on that list of really influential books. But I don't think this many years later the draw is just that massive. I think it'll do well, better than Blade Runner did. But God, I can't stop. Like, I feel like God, I'm gonna burp. Just gotta let one rip right into the mic. But yeah, it just makes me wonder if he can. Like, is he not going to bring a lot of those same qualities to Dune, or did he learn or change, or is he, you know, being checked in that way?
No, I think it'll be very similar to Blade Runner.
That's so. And do you think that's going to be a good thing for casual viewers? Like,
no, and I don't think that it. I think take COVID away from it, I feel like it would probably have a similar box office performance as Blade Runner, because like Sicario and Arrival were successes. They were successes on their own terms.
Yeah, and they weren't anticipated films.
Yeah, and Blade Runner and Dune have that huge budget behind them, so they have to make that back. Whereas Arrival was a much smaller movie and it made back way more than its budget. But I also think Blade Runner actually made more money, but it had way bigger of a budget, so it was a failure. So I feel like Dune is going to have a similar situation. Well, it's not going to, because it's going to HBO Max now.
Yeah,
but I feel like
now he's like
COVID away
in the toilet,
and it wasn't going. I don't think it was going to be a huge success.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think
critically it was probably going to be, or it probably is going to be massively acclaimed. It's probably going to be a great movie, given like everything that we've seen of it and all that we know about it. But I feel like it was going to be a similar situation to Blade Runner, and now it's just.
I think it was going to be
anybody.
I think based on the cast and the hype around it, because you do have a certain level of diehard fans. I think that Dune does have enough like really big fans, and I think there's just enough of a pool as a book for people to be like, I want to see Dune. I think it's iconic enough. I think we don't talk about it as much because it's, you know, it's been so long, but I think it's in a lot of people's minds. You know, they see that property. It's got more name recognition than Blade Runner, which is weird to say because I know like in the science fiction fantasy community, everyone knows Blade Runner, you know, but like I talk to people on a regular basis and mention Blade Runner and they're like, I've never seen that. What's that? You know, like I'll be like, oh yeah, one of like the pioneers of science fiction films. And people are like, what's Blade Runner?